Captain Jake Morrison walked through the massive corridors of Nexus Prime, the largest trading station in the galaxy. The walls stretched high above him, built to accommodate beings much taller than humans. Strange lights flickered in patterns he didn't understand, and the air carried scents from a dozen different worlds. Jake had been in space for 15 years, but places like this still amazed him. Creatures from across the galaxy moved past him, some floating, some walking on 6 legs, others gliding on energy fields. Most ignored the human captain, treating him like just another minor species trying to make it in the big galaxy. He was here for a simple job. The Earth Council wanted him to negotiate new trade agreements with the Galactic Trade Consortium. Nothing fancy, just trying to get better deals on the rare metals Earth needed for their growing space fleet. Jake preferred these quiet diplomatic missions to the dangerous exploration work he used to do. The meeting room was enormous, with a circular table that could seat 50 beings. Jake took his assigned spot, noting how small his chair looked compared to the others. Representatives from major galactic powers sat around the table, the insect-like Hiveka with their clicking voices, the glowing luminari who spoke in musical tones, and the crystal beings called Shardine who communicated through colored light patterns. Jake was reviewing his notes when heavy footsteps echoed through the chamber. Every conversation stopped. Even the translation devices seemed to pause for a moment. The creature that entered was 8 feet tall and covered in scales that looked like dark metal. Bone armor decorated with carved symbols covered his chest and arms. His hands ended in claws that could easily tear through steel. Jake recognized the species immediately, Kethmori, the galaxy's most feared warriors. The Kethmori's name was Zekthor, according to Jake's briefing files. He was a legendary hunter who had killed creatures on 100 different worlds. His bone armor was made from the remains of his victims, each piece telling a story of death and victory. Zekthor's yellow eyes scanned the room until they found Jake. A low rumbling sound came from his throat, the Kethmori equivalent of laughter. "So," Zekthor said, his voice deep and rough, "the humans send their little diplomat to play with the grown-ups." Jake kept his face calm. He had dealt with hostile aliens before, though never one quite this intimidating. "I'm Captain Morrison, representing Earth's interests in today's negotiations." "Earth's interests," Zekthor repeated, making the words sound like a joke. "Tell me, little human, what interests could your weak species possibly have that matter to real warriors?" The other delegates watched carefully. Jake could feel their attention like a weight on his shoulders. This wasn't just about trade anymore. It was about how the galaxy saw humanity. "We're interested in peaceful cooperation and mutual benefit," Jake replied steadily. Zekthor's laughter boomed through the chamber. "Peaceful cooperation. How very soft of you." He stood up, his massive frame casting a shadow over Jake's section of the table. "In my culture, we prove our worth through strength. The strong take what they need. The weak serve or die." "Different species have different ways," Jake said. "Indeed they do." Zekthor walked around the table, his claws clicking against the metal surface. "Some species are natural predators. Others are natural prey. I wonder which category humans fall into." Jake noticed the other delegates leaning forward. This was becoming entertainment for them. The Hiveka made excited clicking sounds. The luminari's glow brightened with interest. "Humans have survived and thrived for thousands of years," Jake pointed out. "We've built a civilization that spans multiple star systems, behind walls and weapons." Zekthor sneered. "Any coward can hide behind technology. True strength comes from here." He tapped his armored chest. "And here." He pointed to his massive arms. "I have killed apex predators on worlds where your kind would die in minutes." "I'm sure you have," Jake said calmly. Zekthor stopped directly behind Jake's chair. The human could feel heat radiating from the alien's body. "I have heard interesting things about your species, little captain. They say humans claim to be warriors, but I see no evidence of this. You look soft, weak, like something I would hunt for sport on my homeworld." Jake turned in his chair to face the towering alien. Is there a point to this? Or are you just trying to intimidate me? Intimidate? Zekthor's eyes glowed brighter. No, little human. I am offering you a chance to prove your species has any value at all. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the background hum of the station's systems seemed to fade away. I challenge you to single combat in this station's arena, Zekthor announced. Let us see if humans are truly warriors or just clever prey animals with delusions of strength. Jake felt his heart rate increase, but his training kept his voice steady. And if I refuse? Then everyone here will know that humans are exactly what I claim, weak creatures who hide behind their toys and talk of peace because they lack the courage to fight. Zekthor's smile revealed rows of sharp teeth. Your trade negotiations will suffer greatly, I think. Jake looked around the table. The other delegates were watching with intense interest. Some seemed excited by the prospect of violence. Others appeared curious about how the human would respond. None looked like they would intervene. The arena combat rules permit any weapon or equipment? Jake asked. Standard arena rules apply, Zekthor confirmed. Each fighter may bring whatever they choose. Though I warn you, I have never lost a challenge combat. The bones in my armor come from creatures much more dangerous than you. Jake was quiet for a long moment, thinking. The smart play was to refuse. Zekthor was bigger, stronger, faster, and had natural weapons. Jake was just a human with basic military training. But refusing would mark humanity as weak in the eyes of every major galactic power. I accept your challenge, Jake said finally. Excited murmurs spread around the table. Zekthor's smile widened. Excellent. Tomorrow at midday the arena will be prepared. Bring whatever weapons you think will help you, little human. Bring your best armor. Bring your courage, if you can find any. Zekthor leaned down until his face was inches from Jake's. It will not matter. I will show this galaxy what happens when prey tries to pretend it is a predator. We'll see, Jake replied quietly. As Zekthor walked away, Jake pulled out his communication device and sent a priority message to his ship. He would need 24 hours to prepare for the most important fight of his life, and possibly the most important fight in human history. 24 hours later, Jake Morrison stood at the entrance to the arena complex deep inside Nexus Prime. The massive chamber could hold 50,000 spectators, and today it was packed. Word of the challenge had spread across the station faster than Jake had expected. Beings from dozens of species filled the curved seating areas. Some had traveled from other star systems just to watch. The betting pools were already active. Holographic displays showed odds of 50-1 against the human. Jake wasn't surprised. He looked like exactly what he was, an average-sized human going up against one of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Lieutenant Amy Carter from Jake's crew stood in the designated area for his support team. Her face was pale with worry. Captain, you don't have to do this. We could say you're sick or that there's an emergency on the ship. No, Jake replied, checking his equipment one final time. If I back down now, it will follow humanity for generations. Every negotiation, every first contact, every trade deal, they'll remember that humans ran when challenged. Jake wore his standard military uniform and combat boots. His equipment belt held basic items that looked almost primitive compared to the energy weapons and force shields other species used. Amy had tried to convince him to use more advanced gear, but Jake had his reasons for choosing simple tools. Dr. Ben Torres, the ship's chief medical officer, ran a scanner over Jake one last time. Your vitals are elevated but stable. Try not to die, okay? The paperwork would be murder. Jake managed a small smile. I'll do my best. The arena floor was a circle of smart metal that could reshape itself during combat. Energy barriers separated the fighting area from the spectators. Holographic cameras floated overhead, broadcasting the fight to viewers across the galaxy. Jake had never wanted this much attention. A booming voice echoed through the arena, speaking in the common galactic language. Citizens of the galaxy, today we witness a challenge combat between Zekthor of the Kethmori and Jake Morrison of the humans. The crowd roared when Zekthor entered from the opposite side. The Kethmori warrior had added more bone armor since yesterday. Fresh ritual scars covered his arms and chest, proof of his preparation ceremonies. He carried no weapons beyond his natural claws and teeth. For his species, those were more than enough. Zekthor raised his arms to the crowd, basking in their approval. He was magnificent and terrifying, a perfect example of evolution's cruelest designs. His yellow eyes found Jake across the arena, and his expression promised violence. The human challenger appears to be unarmed, the announcer continued, sounding confused. This is highly unusual for arena combat. Jake walked to the center of the arena, his footsteps seeming tiny compared to Zekthor's heavy approach. The arena floor reflected their images, the towering alien warrior and the small human who had somehow ended up in this impossible situation. Last chance to surrender with honor, Zekthor growled when they met in the center. I could make your death quick. Thanks, but I'll pass, Jake replied. A holographic referee materialized between them. Standard arena rules apply. Combat continues until one fighter yields, is incapacitated, or dies. Fighters may use any equipment they brought. Are both combatants ready? Ready, Zekthor rumbled. Ready, Jake confirmed. Begin. Zekthor moved faster than Jake had expected. One moment the alien was standing still. The next he was lunging forward with claws extended. Jake threw himself sideways, feeling the wind from the attack ruffle his hair. Claws that could have torn him apart missed by inches. The crowd cheered as Zekthor spun and attacked again. Jake rolled away, his military training keeping him alive by fractions of seconds. The Kethemori was incredibly fast for something so large, and his reach was tremendous. For the first 5 minutes, Jake did nothing but survive. He dodged, ducked, and rolled away from attacks that would have killed him instantly. Zekthor played with him, letting him escape by narrow margins while showing off for the crowd. Is this all humans can do? Zekthor called out during a brief pause. Run and hide like frightened prey? Jake used the moment to catch his breath. Sweat ran down his face, but his breathing was still controlled. His heart rate was elevated, but not dangerous. Years of physical training were paying off. Just getting warmed up, Jake replied. Zekthor laughed and attacked again, but this time Jake was ready. Instead of just dodging, he moved in a pattern. He led the alien toward one side of the arena, then suddenly changed direction. Zekthor, expecting another simple dodge, overextended his attack. Jake pulled a small device from his belt, a standard human flashbang grenade. He triggered it just as Zekthor's eyes were adjusting to track his movement. The brilliant light and deafening sound were designed to disorient humans, but Zekthor's enhanced senses made the effect much worse. The alien warrior staggered, temporarily blinded and deafened. Jake moved quickly, staying behind Zekthor where the confused predator couldn't reach him. When Zekthor spun around, Jake was already moving to his blind spot again. Clever, Zekthor admitted as his vision cleared, but tricks will only delay the inevitable. We'll see, Jake said. The next exchange was different. Jake had been watching carefully, learning Zekthor's attack patterns. The Kethemori were ambush predators by nature. They relied on overwhelming initial attacks to finish fights quickly. Zekthor's movements, while incredibly fast and powerful, followed predictable patterns based on his hunting instincts. Jake began to exploit this. He would start to move in one direction, causing Zekthor to begin an attack, then shift at the last second. The alien's own momentum worked against him as he found himself attacking empty air, while Jake moved to a safer position. The crowd began to murmur. This wasn't going as expected. The human wasn't winning, but he wasn't losing as quickly as he should have been. Some of the spectators started paying closer attention instead of just waiting for the inevitable. Stand still and fight, Zekthor roared in frustration. Why would I do that? Jake asked reasonably. Zekthor's next attack was wild with anger. Jake sidestepped and used the alien's momentum to send him crashing into the arena wall. The impact shook the entire chamber, but Zekthor bounced back up, more furious than hurt. You fight like a coward, Zekthor snarled. I fight like a human, Jake corrected. That's when the real battle began. Jake stopped just surviving and started fighting back. Jake Morrison had spent the previous 24 hours doing something no one expected, studying. While Zekthor performed ritual preparations and sharpened his claws, Jake had been watching every available recording of Kethemori combat techniques. He analyzed their movement patterns, studied their biology, and most importantly, learned about their psychology. The Kethemori were apex predators, but that meant they had the weaknesses that came with being apex predators. They expected their prey to behave in predictable ways. They relied on intimidation and overwhelming force. They had never learned to adapt when their usual tactics didn't work. Jake pulled out another item from his belt, a small mirror. As Zekthor charged again, Jake angled it to reflect the arena's bright lights directly into the alien's eyes. Zekthor instinctively flinched and raised his hands to block the glare. In that split second of blindness, Jake moved, but instead of attacking, Jake did something that confused everyone watching. He dropped flat to the ground and remained perfectly still. Zekthor's claws slashed through the air where Jake had been standing. The alien spun around looking for his opponent, but Jake was lying motionless just a few feet away. To Zekthor's predator instincts, Jake had simply vanished. The crowd fell silent. Even the announcer seemed confused. Kethmori hunted by movement. Their eyes were designed to track fast-moving prey across vast distances, but something that stopped moving, especially something lying flat against the ground, became nearly invisible to them. It was a quirk of their evolution that Jake had discovered in his research. Zekthor spun in circles, his enhanced hearing picking up Jake's heartbeat, but his eyes unable to focus on the motionless human. Frustration and confusion began to replace the alien's confidence. "Where are you, coward?" Zekthor roared. Jake remained perfectly still until Zekthor turned away from him. Then he moved quickly and silently, using techniques from his military training. He reached into his equipment belt and pulled out a small device, a sonic emitter designed for wildlife management. The device produced a high-pitched sound just outside human hearing range, but well within Zekthor's enhanced auditory spectrum. The alien warrior clapped his hands over his ears with a howl of pain and rage. "Dirty tricks," someone in the crowd shouted. "Clever tactics," another voice corrected. Jake used Zekthor's momentary disorientation to move again. This time he climbed onto one of the arena's structural supports, gaining a height advantage. When Zekthor recovered and located him, the alien had to look up, putting him at a psychological disadvantage. "Come down and face me properly," Zekthor demanded. "Why?" Jake called back. "This position works better for me." Zekthor leaped upward with incredible strength, his claws scraping against the metal support. But Jake was already moving, swinging to another support using a basic climbing rope. The alien crashed back to the arena floor, frustrated and beginning to tire. The crowd was fully engaged now. Many had never seen combat like this, where the physically weaker fighter used intelligence and preparation instead of brute force. Some booed, calling it dishonorable. Others watched with fascination. Jake noticed something important. Zekthor was breathing harder. The Kethmori were built for quick, devastating attacks, not extended battles. Their massive muscles consumed energy at an incredible rate. Jake's constant movement was forcing the alien to work much harder than he was used to. Meanwhile, Jake felt fine. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters. They could keep going long after other predators had exhausted themselves. Jake's smaller size and efficient cardiovascular system were actually advantages in a long fight. "Getting tired?" Jake asked as he dropped back to the arena floor. "I will tear you apart," Zekthor roared, but there was desperation in his voice now. The alien's next attack was slower, less precise. Jake didn't just dodge. He moved in a way that forced Zekthor to overextend himself. When the alien stumbled slightly, Jake was ready with another surprise. He pulled out a small canister and sprayed its contents into the air between them. The liquid evaporated instantly, creating a cloud of scent molecules. To humans, it smelled like mint. To Zekmori, with their enhanced sense of smell, it was overwhelming. Zekthor staggered backward, his sensitive nostrils burning. Tears streamed from his eyes as his enhanced senses worked against him. "What? What is this sorcery?" Zekthor gasped. "Basic chemistry," Jake replied, "plus knowledge of your species' biology." For the first time since the fight began, real fear flickered in Zekthor's eyes. This wasn't how combat was supposed to work. The stronger fighter was supposed to win through superior force. The human was changing the rules in ways the Kethmori couldn't understand. Jake pressed his advantage. Instead of trying to hurt Zekthor, he focused on disrupting the alien's confidence and fighting rhythm. Every time Zekthor began an attack, Jake would do something unexpected. Drop a smoke pellet, use a sound device, or simply move in ways that confused the alien's predator instincts. "Fight me properly," Zekthor demanded, his voice cracking with frustration. "I am fighting you properly," Jake said calmly. I'm fighting you the human way. That's when Zekthor realized the truth that was slowly dawning on the thousands of spectators. This wasn't a mismatch between a predator and prey. This was a contest between two different types of predator, and the human was winning. Jake had turned Zekthor's own strengths into weaknesses. The alien's enhanced senses became sources of pain. His incredible strength was wasted on attacks that never connected. His predator instincts, honed by millions of years of evolution, were useless against an opponent who refused to behave like prey. The crowd was completely silent now, watching something they had never imagined possible. The betting displays began flickering as odds shifted rapidly. In the support area, Amy Carter stared with her mouth open. He's actually doing it, she whispered. Dr. Torres nodded slowly. He's not just surviving anymore. He's hunting the hunter. Zekthor was no longer the confident predator who had entered the arena. His breathing was labored, his movements less precise. Sweat ran down his scaled hide despite the Kethmori's natural temperature regulation. Most importantly, his yellow eyes showed something that had never been there before. Doubt Jake Morrison, meanwhile, looked exactly like what he was. A human who had been preparing for this moment his entire military career without knowing it. Every survival exercise, every tactical training session, every lesson in asymmetric warfare had led to this fight. You cannot win, Zekthor panted, but his voice lacked conviction. I am Kethmori. We are the apex predators of the galaxy. You're an apex predator on your world, Jake corrected, circling slowly. But we're not on your world anymore. Jake had been gradually moving the fight toward one corner of the arena. Now he revealed why. The smart metal floor in that section could be programmed to change texture and elevation. Jake had spent precious minutes during the fight subtly adjusting the surface using his portable control device. When Zekthor charged again, his feet hit a section of floor that was suddenly slick and uneven. The massive alien, already tired and off balance, crashed to the ground with tremendous force. His bone armor cracked against the arena floor. The crowd gasped. Many had never seen a Kethmori fall in combat. Jake could have pressed his advantage then. He could have used one of his remaining devices while Zekthor was vulnerable. Instead, he stepped back and waited for the alien to regain his feet. Why? Zekthor demanded as he stood up slowly. Why do you not finish me while I am down? Because that's not how humans fight, Jake replied. We don't kill unless we have to. This statement sent a ripple of confusion through the crowd. Most galactic species viewed mercy as weakness. The strong took what they wanted from the weak. That was the natural order. But Jake was demonstrating strength through restraint, which was a concept many aliens had never encountered. Zekthor attacked again, but his heart wasn't in it anymore. Jake could see the change in the alien's posture, the hesitation in his movements. The Kethmori warrior was beginning to understand that he was outmatched, not by superior strength but by superior thinking. Jake's next move was his most important. Instead of continuing to avoid Zekthor's attacks, he began to predict them. He moved to where Zekthor was going to attack before the alien even started the motion. It was as if Jake could read the Kethmori's mind. The truth was simpler than mind reading. Jake had been studying Zekthor's patterns for 30 minutes of combat. Humans were exceptionally good at pattern recognition. It was one of their evolutionary advantages. What looked like magic to the crowd was just applied intelligence. Impossible. Zekthor breathed as Jake avoided another attack by moving to safety before the alien had even started his lunge. Not impossible, Jake said. Just human. The end came suddenly. Zekthor, frustrated beyond reason, attempted his most powerful attack, a leaping strike with both sets of claws extended. It was the same move that had killed dozens of opponents across the galaxy. Jake was ready for it. He had been leading up to this moment for the entire fight. As Zekthor launched himself through the air, Jake stepped aside and used the alien's own momentum against him. A simple trip, perfectly timed, sent the massive Kethmori crashing into the arena wall with devastating force. Zekthor slumped to the ground, stunned and defeated. His bone armor was cracked in several places. His claws scraped uselessly against the arena floor as he tried to rise and failed. Jake walked over and knelt beside the fallen warrior. Do you yield? Zekthor stared up at him with eyes that held wonder instead of anger. I yield. You have won, human. You have won in a way I do not understand. The arena was completely silent for a moment that stretched like eternity. Then someone began to clap. Others joined in. Within seconds, the entire crowd was on their feet, cheering for something they had never expected to see. The holographic referee materialized beside them. The winner of this challenge combat is Jake Morrison of Earth. Jake helped Zekthor to his feet, supporting the alien's weight despite their size difference. "Are you hurt?" "Only my pride," Zekthor admitted. "Human." "Jake Morrison, you have shown me that there are forms of strength I never knew existed. I ask to understand how you fought this way." "I'll be happy to explain," Jake said. "Maybe over dinner?" In the support area, Amy Carter was crying with relief. Dr. Torres was already planning his medical report, knowing that no one would believe it without detailed documentation. But the real impact was just beginning. Across the galaxy, quantum communication networks carried news of the fight. A human, a supposedly weak prey species, had defeated one of the Kethmori's greatest warriors. Not through superior technology or lucky accident, but through tactical brilliance and psychological warfare. On a dozen different worlds, alien leaders called emergency meetings. Trade negotiations that had been stalled for months suddenly moved forward as species reconsidered their opinions of humanity. Military commanders began studying human tactical manuals that they had previously ignored. The Hivka collective mind buzzed with new data about human adaptability. Their insectoid nature appreciated the efficiency of Jake's victory. Maximum result with minimum energy expenditure. The crystalline Shardine began analyzing recordings of the fight, fascinated by the mathematical precision of Jake's movements and timing. The ethereal luminary requested formal meetings with human philosophers, wanting to understand the moral framework that allowed strength to be combined with mercy. But not all reactions were positive. In the dark reaches of space, the hegemony of Veltar watched the recordings with growing alarm. They had built their empire on the principle that might makes right. A species that could win through intelligence rather than force represented a threat to everything they believed. As Jake left the arena with Zekthor limping beside him, neither of them realized that their fight had changed the course of galactic history. The galaxy had indeed shivered, not from fear of human weapons, but from the realization that the most dangerous predator might be the one that didn't look dangerous at all. 3 weeks after the fight, Jake Morrison sat in his captain's quarters aboard the Aurora, staring at reports that changed everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the galaxy. The fight had become known as the Morrison Doctrine across dozens of star systems. Not just because of the victory itself, but because of what it represented. Humans had proven they possessed something more dangerous than claws, stronger than armor, and more precise than energy weapons: the ability to think their way out of any situation. Amy Carter knocked and entered, carrying another stack of communication requests. "Captain, we've got 17 more interview requests from galactic news networks, 5 requests for tactical training demonstrations, and 3 marriage proposals from species I can't even pronounce." "Marriage proposals?" Jake raised an eyebrow. Apparently, intelligence is considered very attractive by the Velnari. "Who knew?" Amy set the reports on his desk. "More importantly, Admiral Kate Williams wants to speak with you. Priority 1 communication." Jake activated the quantum communicator and Admiral Williams appeared as a hologram. The leader of Earth's space forces looked tired but excited. "Jake, I don't know whether to promote you or court-martial you for starting an interstellar incident," she began without preamble. "How big of an incident are we talking about, Admiral?" "The kind where entire civilizations are rethinking their foreign policies," Williams replied. "Let me give you some examples. The Rigel Trade Consortium just offered us exclusive mining rights to 3 star systems. Systems they've never allowed any other species to touch. The Scientific Collective on Kepler 442b wants to establish joint research programs with our universities, and the Tau Ceti Defense Alliance has formally requested human military advisors." Jake rubbed his forehead. "That's a lot. Gets better, or worse depending on your perspective," Williams continued. "Our diplomatic corps is reporting breakthroughs across the board. Negotiator Ryan Cooper just ended a 300-year war between the Antares Republic and the Vega hegemony, using mediation techniques that apparently nobody else had ever tried. Explorer Maya Singh solved a stellar engineering problem that had the Centauri Collective stumped for 50 years. She did it in 6 hours. Admiral, I just want to fight. I didn't. You didn't just win a fight, Jake. You proved that humans think differently than anyone else in the galaxy. And now everyone wants to know how that thinking works. The reports on Jake's desk told the story in detail. Human negotiators were suddenly in demand across the galaxy, not because they were tougher than other species, but because they approached problems from angles no one else considered. Human engineers were being consulted on projects that had stalled for decades. Human philosophers were engaged in debates that were reshaping interstellar law, but it wasn't all positive news. Dr. Torres appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "Captain, you need to see the intelligence reports from Sector 7. Jake accepted the data pad and read quickly. His expression darkened with each line. The hegemony of Veltar had been busy since the arena fight. Their military was conducting intensive studies of human tactical methods. Their intelligence services were attempting to infiltrate human colonies and research facilities. Most concerning, they had been recruiting other species that felt threatened by humanity's sudden rise in galactic status. They're scared, Jake realized. They should be, Admiral Williams said from the hologram. Not because we're a military threat. We're still outnumbered 1,000 to 1. They're scared because their entire civilization is built on the idea that might makes right. If intelligence can triumph over force, their whole system collapses. Jake thought about Zekthor, who had become an unlikely ally. The Kethmori warrior was currently on Earth, working with human military instructors to develop new training programs that combined Kethmori strength with human tactics. Other members of his species were following suit, eager to learn these new forms of combat. The cultural revolution among the Kethmori was remarkable. Warriors who had spent their lives believing that physical dominance was the only measure of worth were discovering the power of strategic thinking. Some traditional Kethmori leaders opposed the changes, but the younger generation was embracing human concepts with enthusiasm. "There's something else," Amy said quietly. "The long-range sensors have detected unusual movement in Veltar space. Large fleet concentrations heading toward the frontier." Jake looked at the star charts displayed on his wall screen. The frontier regions were where human colonies were most vulnerable. "They're positioning for something. The question is what," Williams said. "Our intelligence suggests they're still studying human tactics, trying to find counters. But some of their movements suggest they might be planning more direct action." Jake stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. 3 weeks ago, he had been a simple captain trying to negotiate trade agreements. Now he was apparently at the center of a galactic shift that could lead to war or peace, depending on choices that hadn't been made yet. "Admiral, what are our orders?" "Keep doing what you're doing," Williams replied. "Be human. Think like a human. Show the galaxy that we're not a threat to peaceful species, but that we won't be pushed around by aggressive ones." After the communication ended, Jake remained at the viewport. Amy joined him, looking out at the same stars. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Accepting Zekthor's challenge?" Jake considered the question. "No. Someone was going to challenge humanity eventually. Better it happened with someone like Zekthor, who can respect strength even when it comes in an unexpected form." "And the Veltar? They'll make their choice," Jake said. "We can't control that. We can only control how we respond." In his final log entry that night, Jake wrote, "Personal log, Captain Jake Morrison. 3 weeks ago, humanity proved it belongs among the stars. We showed the galaxy that intelligence, adaptability, and mercy can be more powerful than claws and armor. But with that proof comes responsibility. The galaxy is watching us now, waiting to see what we'll do with the respect we've earned. Some hope will lead them to a better future. Others fear we'll upset the balance of power that has existed for millennia. Both are probably right. The galaxy has shivered, not from fear of our weapons, but from the realization that the most dangerous predator in the universe might be the one that doesn't look like a predator at all. Now we have to decide what kind of predator we want to be." Outside his viewport, the stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that one small fight in an alien arena had changed the course of galactic civilization forever. The Aurora continued its journey through space, carrying with it the hopes and fears of an entire species that had suddenly found itself at the center of everything. The galaxy had indeed shivered, and the tremors were still spreading.